It's entirely possible that one day Michael Jackson might have an entire religious movement dedicated to him.
We love Michael! We love Michael! We love Michael!
Michael Jackson is considered the most profitable dead celebrity of all time.
They were a dedicated and persistent group
We have to stay in it till we see him!
who were acknowledged by an occasional smile and wave.
The Moonwalkers are highly engaged with keeping his legacy alive any way they can. I've spent the last 3 months completely immersing myself in the Michael Jackson fandom to understand what motivates them, how they think, and I'm gonna share my findings in this video. They call themselves the Moonwalkers or Appleheads. So you might be wondering, why did I do this? So let me give you some context on what I knew about Michael Jackson before the film. It's going to be hard to believe this, but I knew absolutely nothing about him. Growing up, my parents weren't fans. When he died, I was around 11 years old in 2009. I remember my parents watching the funeral on Sky News, but that wasn't unusual. My mum is a chronic news watcher, so it wasn't anything particularly special that she was watching the news that day. It was just another event that was happening in the world. I remember his silver casket coming out, his brothers carrying him. In high school, the only time I heard his music was when we did the Thriller dance in performing arts. Again, it didn't really capture my interest. I learnt the dance and moved on. And then in my 20s, I maybe had 2 of his songs in my playlist. So when I watched the film, I had completely fresh eyes and I was going in with no preconceptions. I just thought, I'm going to the cinema, gonna watch just another little film. But watching his film left me with so many questions and not enough answers. So let's get into what I've learned about the Michael Jackson fandom. The biggest thing that stands out to me when I've interacted with their groups is how truly cross-generational it is. You have Gen Xers who were teenagers at Michael Jackson's height in the 80s. They went to his concerts. They stood outside of Neverland. They were mega fans. But then you have children as young as 5 who know his dance moves, who can sing every word of his song, dress up like him, and are completely obsessed with him. He is the first artist in history to score a Hot 100 top hit single across 6 different decades, meaning from the 1960s until the 2020s, Michael Jackson has had a hit single. Everyone across every generation should know at least one Michael Jackson song. And that was me before I watched the film. I knew Pretty Young Thing and Rock With You, even though I wasn't immersed or aware of his life and legacy. Looking back, it's kind of crazy that I didn't know about the biggest pop star that's ever existed, but I knew at least 2 of his songs, which shows that even those who aren't mega fans, some way, somehow, they will come across Michael Jackson in their lifetime. I decided to see how strong the Moonwalker fandom was by attending one of the events. I went to a Lookalike contest in London, organized by the group, and the main thing that stood out to me was how diverse his fans are. I saw people from different religions, of course ages like I mentioned, Gen Xers to Gen Z to Gen Alpha, men and women in equal amounts, teenagers, people who were dressed up, were across the spectrum. And I believe that represents who Michael Jackson was as an artist. His whole mission was about uniting people. He spoke about injustice. He created a lot of music that promoted globalism, togetherness, and he wanted sort of international peace, essentially. Even his father said that if Michael Jackson was to run the world, there would be no wars, which shows his personal ethos is reflected in his fandom.
The world was like Michael. There would never be any wars. Everybody would get along. And that's the type of kid he was. And he wanted to make people happy all over the world.
A fandom truly does represent the person they support. A few years ago, I was invited to a rapper's party. For context, I'm a fashion journalist. So I get invited to celebrity events pretty frequently, and a particular rapper was there. The experience that I had with his fandom was completely awful. I don't want to say who the rapper is. His fandom stood on my feet, pushed me, they kicked me. Bear in mind, I was just standing in line. I was waiting to get into the venue, and his fandom were just completely awful to interact with. And I believe it's a reflection of his music, his message. It's all about destruction and violence that is reflected in how the people who interact with his content and like his content behave in the world. Whereas with Michael Jackson fans, I didn't have that experience. It was a very safe and protective environment from what I saw. One thing I will say about the Moonwalkers is that they are fiercely loyal and emotional. They have a real strong connection to him, almost as if he were alive today. Michael made fans feel loved, seen, and chosen, giving them the love he never got in his childhood, but wished he had. He would give them even the clothes on his back, showing an almost sacrificial nature towards them.
My childhood was completely taken away from me. There was no Christmas, there was no birthdays. It was not a normal childhood, no normal pleasures of childhood. Those were exchanged for hard work, struggle, and pain.
Their loyalty is most displayed when negativity is spread about him. So I was in one of the group chats and I mentioned how Michael used to hit Bubbles, his pet chimpanzee, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that I brought that up. Immediately, I saw the group chat going on fire.
The kids was playing with Bubbles, so Bubble bit Jay.
Bubbles is the monkey.
It's the monkey. Bubble bit Jay on his arm, and Jay said, "Dad, he bit me." Michael said, "He did what?" He said, "Bubble, did you bite him?" Michael said, bam! Slapped him to his knees, and Bubba said, I said, "What is he doing?" Michael said, "Praying for his life, because he know he done did the wrong thing."
So Michael Jackson beat up Bubbles.
Even Peter spoke out about the fact that you shouldn't really be keeping exotic animals in your home, treating them like a part of the family, because wild animals are unpredictable and you're putting them in a situation where they might act out and hurt someone else unintentionally. So I mentioned that in the group chat and they were like, "No, you shouldn't talk about Michael like that. He's gentle. He would never hurt anyone. He's an angel." So I instantly saw that, okay, this is an environment where you can only speak positively about him.
I said what I said.
Okay, well, what you said was some bullshit.
But you don't like it, you don't like it.
They're very protective and guarded about negativity thrown or spoken about Michael Jackson. There is a massive distrust within that community around media coverage, press, and any narratives that go against how they view him. The Moonwalkers have a very strong parasocial relationship with him, which again is very fascinating because he's been dead for almost 2 decades, but it's almost as if he's still alive. When I have interacted with them, generally they're quite pleasant, welcoming, warm, and friendly. When I went to the Lookalike contest, everybody wanted to have a chat. It was very safe. That was one of the things they mentioned when they did the housekeeping rules. They said, make sure everybody's looking after each other. There was even one little girl, she was one of the performers. I believe she performed Billie Jean. Halfway through her performance, she started crying. I think she was just overwhelmed because there were so many people there watching her dance. One of the organizers said, "Why don't I dance with you?" And that instantly made her feel comfortable and she continued and finished her dance routine. The community is very supportive and they're very responsive. I've never been in a group chat where people are talking so much back and forth. They send videos and pictures, send each other their favorite songs. They buy a lot of memorabilia, but I'm going to speak about that a little bit later. One interesting thing about fandoms is they tend to have code words. I've noticed that the Michael fandom doesn't have many code words, but the main ones that I've seen are Applehead and Gilter. I'm going to speak about Gilter in a moment. Applehead is essentially more of a niche endearment term that Michael used to use for his fans, friends, nieces, nephews, and anyone in his close inner circle.
Most kids never call me by a name Michael, either Applehead or another name which I don't want to say.
Applehead. Applehead.
The reference originates from one of Michael's favourite shows. It was called The Three Stooges, and they would often call each other Appleheads harmlessly as a friendly little joke. On to the term Gilter.
Michael Jackson innocent. Michael Jackson innocent. Michael Jackson innocent.
The term Gilter comes from Michael Jackson's allegations.
Is it really appropriate for a 44-year-old man to share a bedroom with a child who is not related to him at all?
That's a beautiful thing.
That's not a worrying thing?
Why should it be worrying? Who's the criminal? Who's Jack the Ripper in the room?
A Gilter in the Michael Jackson fandom is someone who believes he was guilty of the allegations he was accused of. But the main thing that I would say about his fandom is that they have what I will call fandom immunology, meaning they really want to keep the space pure and positive. So they don't want anything that will taint his image or the memory of him. So if anyone mentions the allegations or speaks negatively about him, they're essentially a little bit exiled, I would say. I decided to go to a Michael Jackson Jackson dance class because I wanted to see what is it like, again, when you interact with people who are really immersed in his world and they are learning his dance moves. How are the dance teachers? That sort of thing. I decided to share the video in one of the group chats, and someone had commented on my video, you shouldn't go to this person's dance class because they have publicly said that they believe he is guilty. He's a guilter. So they let each other know when someone has had a history of saying negative things about Michael, and they make it known that he should be exiled from the community. You shouldn't support them monetarily or go to their events that they organize.
Good morning. Good morning. Not you. You can show.
So I found that quite interesting how invested they are in knowing who is a true Michael Jackson fan and who is an imposter who's using Michael Jackson's name to profit and make money from, even if they're not a genuine fan. But to be honest, as a general rule, his fans care more about his music, his fashion, his creativity, and his humanitarian efforts.
He's also given over $300 million to charity in his lifetime.
They're not interested in talking about the allegations. They're not interested in talking about the negative things about him because they're fans. They want to hear about the good things that he did. A lot of them sort of separate the art from the artist. They don't want to blend the two, which I'm sure is pretty consistent with most fandoms. But what I will say is I have seen some fans who have nuance about the allegations. They may not agree with his actions, but they may not necessarily think he's fully guilty. The Moonwalkers are highly organized. Every single event that I went to, it started on time, it finished on time. It was an environment where they made sure to get the right permits. For example, one of the events that I went to was by the London Eye, and to do an event by the London Eye, you have to get a permit, which takes a lot of planning and effort. They're very invested in keeping his legacy alive. Even when the Michael biopic came out of cinemas in July, they started organizing their own cinema screenings with independent cinemas. Many fans were actively going to the cinema multiple times to watch the Michael biopic to make sure that it crosses over the $1 billion revenue mark. They go to memorials on his death day, and they plan parties and events on his anniversaries. And there's a group chat for absolutely every aspect of Michael Jackson's life that you can imagine. I've even seen geographical location group chats where you can connect and meet up with other Michael Jackson fans in your city. The Moonwalkers are highly engaged with keeping his legacy alive any way they can. So for example, his daughter Paris Jackson is doing some shows this year, and Michael fans are going to the show just so they can be as close as they possibly can to a Jackson member of the family. Even Janet Jackson, I've seen many people under her comments on Instagram say, please Janet, you have to go on tour. You're the closest thing we will ever get to seeing Michael perform. So the family gain a lot of support from the Michael fans. They benefit from being adjacent to his legacy. One thing I will say about this fandom is they are a self-contained economy. They're very easy to sell to. If you are selling Michael Jackson t-shirts, they will be circulating them in group chats. If you're selling figurines or toys or books, they will buy them. They spend hours watching his content, crying over his death. It's almost like a grieving process that they're going through. In the pursuit of understanding Michael Jackson, his life and his fans, I decided to buy one of two of his only books that he's ever written. This one is called Dancing the Dream, and I also bought the Thriller album. And the reason I bought it was because I really just wanted to understand, why do people like him so much? He changed music sonically and how we experience it visually with short films like Smooth Criminal, pioneering the industry's storytelling abilities, a core reason why his fandom love his artistry. And when I bought it and I shared it in the group chat, everybody went wild because this book is incredibly hard to buy. They had to actually start reprinting this book because his fans' demand was too high. People were buying it on resale for $200. I ended up getting it for £25 because they started reprinting copies of it. That's how dedicated his fandom are. Because of the demand and the popularity, they can force a publisher to reissue a book. That's unheard of. Because the interest is so strong, they just had to. Michael Jackson is considered the most profitable dead celebrity of all time. Since he died, as of October 2025, $3.5 billion has been made in his name. That number will inevitably be out of date. It is likely closer to 5 billion now that the movie has reached $1 billion in and of itself. Not to mention all of the merchandising sales that would have come from people like myself buying memorabilia to understand his legacy and engage with him. Another really interesting thing that I found out is that when Michael Jackson died, 34 fans sued Conrad Murray. If you didn't know, Conrad Murray is the man who is attributed to Michael's death. 5 of the fans actually won their case and they were issued €1 each. Their lawyers even said that it's the first time in the world that the notion of emotional damage in connection with a pop star has been legally recognized. That means his fans are literally changing legislation and history because of their love, their adoration and commitment to his legacy and his death. I learned so much about Michael Jackson in this process. There's so much about his life that I even still feel like I'm yet to discover even after 3 months of researching. You have to dig through a lot of the polished media content that is sensationalized to get to the truth of who he was. And even after 3 months of research, I still don't feel like I know the real Michael Jackson. Even the film itself didn't cover who he truly was as a person, or even why his fans love him so much. It just showed his journey to fame and a glimpse into the relationship he had with his father Joseph. What they showed of his relationship with his father Joseph was just the tip of the iceberg. Some of the things I've read about what Joe Jackson was actually like was not shown in the film. The film was highly sanitized and commercial. They cleaned up the messy parts so that it could be put on a big screen for all ages.
How often would he beat you?
Too much.
Would he only use a belt?
Why do you do this to me? No, more than a belt.
What else would he use to hit you with?
Ironing cords, throw you up against the wall as hard as he could. Remember hearing my mother scream, "Joe, you're gonna kill him, you're gonna kill him, stop it, you're gonna kill him."
But the truth of what Michael Jackson's life was actually like is a lot more tragic and undiscovered. Let me know what your thoughts on this video were and whether you are a Michael Jackson diehard fan or if you're more of an observer. Subscribe if you like this video and make sure to leave me suggestions for future videos. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!